back to the truth about marriage. It has been a while. May was a pretty crazy month with school, and we just got back from vacation. So, it has been a little bit, but I thought it would be time to make another video. And so the piece of advice / truth that I'd like to share is that you have control over where the conversation goes. So I think the things that I'm going to share today can apply to any relationship, whether it's a friendship, a relationship with a family member, a coworker, even a stranger, but especially within a marriage. And so first I'm going to read Colossians 3 verse 8, which says, "But now put off all such things as anger, rage, malice, slander, and abusive language from your mouth." So obviously, when this was written, Paul was talking to the people in the Colossian church who were dealing with a lot of false prophets and things, but I'm gonna pick out something really tiny from this verse that probably gets overlooked most of the time. And so the way that this is written, it says, "But now put off all such things." So it's a command. And because we have free will, because God gifted us the gift of free will, that means that putting off all of those negative things is within our control. We have the capability to choose to spew pain with our language or to spew productivity with our language. And I'll get to that after I read the next verse. So that's one point. You have a choice about how you use your words and about what words come out of your mouth. So from Matthew 5:39, it says, "But I tell you not to oppose an evil person." This is Jesus. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, turn your other cheek to him as well." Now, I was trying to figure out how to break this down for you in an articulate way, because a lot of people take this verse and they use it to justify abuse. But something that is pretty cool once you get into the context of this is that, so this person got slapped on their right cheek, and most people are right-handed. And so it can be assumed, a lot of historians assume, that whoever is supposedly slapping the person that Jesus is talking about in this parable is being slapped with a right hand. And so if you just imagine a face in front of you and you slap with your right hand, it's a backhand slap. And the commentary that I found said that back then and even today, a backhand slap is meant more as a sign of disrespect than it is to actually physically hurt someone. And so this commentary that I found from Bible Ref, I'll just read it to you on my laptop quick because it's going to describe it a lot more articulately than I can. It says, "In short, Christ's command here does not mean you must do nothing while someone beats you to a bloody pulp. He is speaking to believers who will experience persecution and hate from the world." Matthew 5:11 and 12. The proper Christian response to discrimination, mocking, or insults is to simply let it go. Do not resist the evil person, or in my translation it says, do not oppose an evil person. Instead, prove that such acts are not worth a response. Even better, as the following verses show, is to turn the abuse upside down through love. And so turning the other cheek is not necessarily egging them on to hit you again or to throw another insult again. Turning the other cheek is simply saying, this isn't even worth a response. And so what I'm not saying is that you should ignore your spouse. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that your marriage is worth more than an emotional outburst, or a tired outburst, or, whatever kind of outburst it is. Your marriage is worth more than an outburst. And so if your spouse decides not to put off the painful language that was mentioned in Colossians 3:8, if they decide to instead use anger and malice and abusive language, you have the choice to retaliate, or you can turn the other cheek, diffuse the situation, and speak calmly and speak lovingly. This is something that is really hard to do. It's really easy to get defensive when you feel like you're being attacked, but often like how we see, violent or vicious dogs are often just scared dogs. It's kind of the same thing with people. Oftentimes our negative behaviors and our outbursts are because of some underlying thing, whether it's fear, stress, anxiety, tiredness, sadness. There's a reason why your spouse is potentially using this painful language towards you. And it's not because they don't love you. Hopefully, if you have, a good, healthy marriage, hopefully it's not because they don't love you, but it's because there's something going on that is just making it very hard for them to articulately describe how they feel in a way that's not hurtful. So there's always something to be read between the lines when your spouse uses or chooses painful words instead of productive words. So how do we diffuse the situation? Well, I'm going to go to 1 Peter 4 verses 8 through 10, where it says, "Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms." So, I think the first sentence where it says, "Above all, love each other deeply because love covers a multitude of sins," I think that's the most important for this conversation. And so when I think of that, I think a good sort of parallel to love covering a multitude of sins is spicy food. I have a very poor tolerance to spicy food. I don't know why. My husband makes fun of me for it, but I just do. And most people know that milk or cheese or ranch or, other dairy products usually do a pretty good job of diffusing the spicy sensation in your mouth. Well, why? So spice we can think of as the painful language, the outbursts, whatever, an angry tongue. And so spicy foods typically have this oily substance called capsaicin, and I hope I'm saying that right. And because it's an oily substance, things like water, saliva, even pop, sometimes they don't mix well with this capsaicin. And so when this oily substance binds to the receptors in your mouth, there's nothing that can stop it from just like feeling the burning sensation. Milk or dairy products, they coat your entire mouth. I think most people know that about dairy products. Like they leave some sort of film in your mouth. Well, that film covers those same receptors, and because it's not water-based, because usually there's some sort of like fat in milk, it mixes well with the capsaicin, and so therefore relieves most of the spicy burning sensation in your mouth. So that was a very long explanation just to say that milk can be like your love. It may not make the pain completely go away, but it's the first step to diffusing the situation and to resolving whatever conflict you're having. Or if it's, not that anything is ever really one-sided, but if it's a situation where your spouse is just hurting and they haven't found the words to actually express that to you, that's the first step to kind of digging into what is bothering your spouse, is diffusing the situation. And so tangibly, I often think that diffusing the situation can look like, at least in my marriage, taking like just 5 minutes to just go in separate rooms and breathe. We're not putting away the conversation, we're not throwing it out, but we're just putting a pause so that we can both breathe a little bit. I've heard in more intense situations, some people will go and reread their vows just to be reminded of the promises that they made for each other during these hard times. I find a hug works really well. Sometimes even just saying like, "I love you," and that hurt. And I'm gonna try not to get upset, but I love you, and like, we'll figure it out. Just restating like, I do love you. Even though you said something that irritated me, I'm going to try not to overreact, but I still love you. And whatever you say, it's not gonna push me away. I'm still here. that's going to make them feel safe. That's going to make them feel cared for. And you can't be angry at someone when they're telling you that they love you. You know, if it's a sincere I love you, it's really hard to be angry with someone when they're telling you that. And so whatever you can do, whatever works for you and your relationship, to just bring it down step by step. Don't throw away the conversation, but just bring it down. All right, so what do we do now? Well, in Matthew 6:14 and 15, it says, "Yes, if you forgive others for the wrongs they do to you, then your Father in heaven will also forgive you of your wrongs. But if you don't forgive others, then your Father in heaven will not forgive the wrongs you do." So I think we all know this as Christians, and even people that aren't Christians but know the Christian doctrine or have heard before. It all comes down to forgiveness, because we have all been forgiven of sins that we can never possibly atone for. So control your mouth. Diffuse the situation when your spouse can't or won't control theirs, because they can. They also have the capability to control their mouth just like you do. And then at the end, forgive. Now, I feel like sometimes I can come off like my marriage is perfect in these videos. And the truth is, it's not. No one's marriage is. I think we're really blessed with a pretty simple marriage, which I think lends to, at least for us, a happier marriage, because we're both fairly simple people. Not in a bad way. We just don't need a lot to be happy. But there was one time where these steps, I guess, worked really well. We were having an argument about, I think it was money or something along those lines. I don't even remember what it was about anymore, to be 100% honest. But I just remember Keller had this outburst that was very surprising to me, because he doesn't get very worked up often. And he had this outburst that was not true, and I knew it wasn't true, and I knew that he was feeling that way because he wasn't opening himself to see my side of things. He was just very worked up. He was tired from work, whatever, and I knew he was just speaking out of that emotion. And so I just stopped, because I am an emotional person. I teared a little bit because I was just taken aback. And I could have done one of two things. I could have yelled back at him. I could have responded out of emotion, because I was hurt by what he said. Or I could have did what I ended up doing, and I took like 10 seconds of not saying anything. I took some deep breaths, some calming, centering breaths. I looked at him and I said, "You know that's not true." And then I proceeded to explain calmly again and without attacking him why it wasn't true. He takes a deep breath and goes, "Wow, I'm sorry." And we hugged. We, talked through it, and we were fine like 20 minutes later. And we've never gone back to that conversation. And I still really even don't remember what it entirely was about, to be honest, because we've forgiven each other for that. But that's just a tangible example of how that conversation could have turned into a very explosive, long-lasting fight. But instead, because at least one of us was level-headed in the conversation, we diffused it, and we solved a problem. And it made our marriage stronger because of it. Because, everyone says that practice makes perfect. The more you can practice having a level head in those conversations, diffusing those situations, speaking from a place of love in those situations instead of a place of emotion in those instances. The more you can practice that, the more it's going to become a reflex in your marriage and even outside of your marriage as well. So I hope that made sense. I hope that you might have gotten some tangible advice from this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.